Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Good evening. Hope everybody's having a good day or night, wherever you may be. As I was starting this here just a few minutes ago, it looks like Bitcoin just got an alert. It was moving down 3% in 4 hours. So, good time for a stream here. Obviously, as you guys have seen some of my recent posts, we're at a pretty interesting spot here. And for all you guys who joined my stream last week, I think I made it pretty clear that, when we were up here, it was kind of a fork in the road type moment where, I gave the evidence, I gave the proof that this could be a trap based on the liquidation data, based on, what we've seen in the past. And I gave clear levels that we needed to break really to say, okay, we could be seeing some structure shifts here. I hopped on it was a Twitter space Sunday night right before this market really lost that 95K. And I was, straight up as well that, losing 95K essentially was like taking a big step back after a month and a half of trying to break out of a resistance. And I made it pretty clear, it wouldn't be a good setup if we saw that. And obviously, look since then, the Bears have just taken full control. And obviously, we're in an interesting spot here. So yeah, I'm excited to break down a little bit here. Obviously, not too much has changed, technically speaking. We're back at the level we've been since, November in a sense. But I think at this point, this is like, we're getting down to the wire here where we could be starting a breakdown, which, potentially could be the last breakdown before we see either sustained sideways until summer or, revival back to where we are now or back in the 100Ks. So it's going to be interesting. I also changed some settings on my microphone. So if you guys let me know if there's any problems with that, I think that it should sound a little bit better. And I know the last streams it sometimes cut out. So anything pops up there, let me know. But as usual, feel free to throw in questions. Love to make these educational, obviously informative, but educational as well. And yeah, towards the end, we can maybe look at any requests, but for the most part, we're going to hone in on kind of, I think what the important meat of or what this market right now is. So yeah, the first thing I'm going to share here is, VWAPs are just amazing. I know for you guys that have followed me for a while, I'm sure you guys have heard me say it 100 times. VWAPs, VWAPs, VWAPs. If you don't use them, you're just kind of left behind in a way. They're such a simple tool, and they're such an amazingly accurate tool, like incredibly accurate. My first video here on YouTube was actually about VWAP. So if you never watched that, go ahead and watch that. Obviously, it's not the most detailed breakdown, but it'll get you up to speed based on how I use a lot of these VWAPs here because they're amazing. You guys saw me the last few days. I was talking about the election VWAP. We looked at that, and then today I talked about the halving VWAP. We look at the 12-month VWAP. It's been one that we've watched and looked at for a long time. So yeah, this is it's definitely an interesting tool that not enough people use. Microphone's softer and quieter than usual. All right, well, let me know if here. I'll put it a little bit closer, but I think for the most part should be pretty good. But if there's any big issues, let me know. But yeah, so let's start off here with obviously there's been some people I saw in the comments are like, oh yeah, people have thrown this chart around. It was actually this one right here. People have thrown this chart around. It's what everybody thinks, this and that. Well, guess what? At the top here, what did everyone think? Everyone thought like, hey, we're in October. All the last cycles have lasted the exact amount of time. The top's in. And there was a big handful of people that believed that. I shared a lot of evidence since April. I wasn't fully like, yeah, this is definitely going to happen, but I showed the evidence like, hey, mid-October is the time when like this would be the longest cycle if we continued after that. So, I'm not necessarily going to look at the herd or, the 100 posts I see on my For You page and say, yeah, too many people believe this. It's not going to happen. At the end of the day, like, there's something called a herd mentality, and like, nowadays, if a lot of people believe something, it could actually happen. It can actually make it happen. So I'm not gonna guard my analysis based on what other people believe. this is just something that I pointed out 2 weeks ago. I'm not saying it was like, hey, this is destined to happen, but I don't ignore anything. I don't try not to have a bias when we look at these charts, guys. People on Twitter, they have these biases, and I'm in some spaces and everyone's bullish. Why? Probably because they just have a bunch of bags that want to go up, but they're not looking at the evidence like, hey, this actually might not be a bullish setup. So I try to show both sides of the scenario and lean one way. I think it's the best way to do it. If you're following people who are like, super bearish or bullish, and they're not even going to entertain the other side of the argument, maybe you shouldn't listen to them so much, because it's not really what trading's about. Trading's not about predicting all the time, being right all the time, being, picking perfect bottoms and tops. It's about knowing the scenarios, knowing what's more probable, even if that's even a 5 or 10% higher probability. That's the way we have to approach these markets. So just be careful with people that are like, very, very, stuck to one direction. But, for the most part, I mean, this is a pretty obvious setup here. What makes it really interesting is that we put this 12-month VWAP on here, and we have the bands. So we see it's a band because at the end of the day, levels are not always precise. We could see here. Well, that's why I like to put bands on here, because it makes it like, okay, yeah, it's a bigger area. It's like a zone, let's consider it a zone. And sure enough, look at the similarity here. I mean, it's striking, High was put in, sideways for, what was this, 2-3 months, 2.5 months. Rejection at the 12-month VWAP, took out all of the shorts that were piling in here, went down for the final leg down, right? So, this is the exact same price action. High was put in, went sideways for now a month and a half, broke out of a resistance zone. Everybody thought we were back, because it did look good, but, people weren't warning like, hey, this might be a trap that takes out shorts before we just go right back to where we were. And look, that's what happened. So this is a scenario that I'm keeping close eyes on, and guess what? We pull out our handy trend lines that people say, oh, those are only for people that are new to this game. Yeah, right. Trend lines are very, very powerful. Don't overuse them, but sometimes it's all you need is a trend line. Draw a trend line at that bottom, bottom trend line there. Very similar right here. We see a sustained move below that. That's considered a breakout. Whether we just sweep the lows or not, that's something that you watch very closely. So look where we're at now as we speak. Very close to that bottom trend. So, this is something that I think all of us need to be prepared for. And obviously, the last stream, I don't know if we have volume data on here, do we? Okay, yeah, we do have volume data. My thought is we're not going to go below 60, high 50s, 60s. If this is the beginning of another breakdown, I don't think we're going to go below that. And sure enough, this even actually lines up. I'm not a big fractal guy, but look, that does put us right back into that range there. At the end of the day, I don't believe Bitcoin's going lower than that unless, the economy just crumbles, unless something really bad happens. So yeah, let's see if you guys had any questions here. If quarter one is bearish, would you think Q2 would be bullish or entire multi-year market shift? Good question there. For the most part, I think a bearish quarter one sets us up for at least a rally into June. Whether that's a sustained rally that pushes us back up to, an interesting range or not, or like, if we get down into the 60, 70, maybe that rally does just push us back there, and then we do more of that, and then towards the end of the year we can kind of see a more sustained revival. So yeah, I'm still on the boat that this year is just down only. I don't believe that. Obviously that's going to be a little bit determining on stocks. If the stock market continues shaky like we saw last April, yeah, we're probably going to see, crypto do about the same. But if stocks continue the way they've been, obviously granted, these little scares that we have or just pullbacks along the way, I think we can see some type of fun few months this year. I think it's definitely a good probability. What is the indicator on TradingView for VWAPs you'd recommend? Well, for all you guys watching, the thing that we keep talking about, or I keep talking about here, like the halving VWAP, the election VWAP, these are all anchored VWAPs. So if you go here four tools down, and you see anchor view up, click that. You can place this anywhere on your chart. Click it, bam. It's going to draw a view up from that point. So when I talk about halving view up, election view up, that just means it's a view up placed from that date. Hopefully that makes sense. Very powerful. Like look, let's put on the election view up. What was this? It was Tuesday, but that's the closest. Look at how accurate that is. I mean, perfect rejection line. I mean, can you get more accurate than that? I mean, let's zoom in. Truly, can you get more accurate than that? No, you can't. You know, it's incredible. So that's what I'm telling you guys. Everybody that's watching, like, if you guys aren't using view ops, like, you know, you're leaving something on the table, because man, that was perfect, absolutely perfect. So like, look what we're sandwiched in between right now. We're sandwiched in between the halving view up and the election view up. Historically speaking, the halving view up is a bull market band. Look at 2021 and 2022. You know, we had perfect support here, new high, perfect support here, went sideways. Exact same place where we just were the last month and a half. See those two bounces off that halving VWAP? Let's look right here. Same exact two bounces off that halving VWAP, coming back down to that right now. So very useful lines. Put them on your chart. Definitely use them. You know, really can't go wrong with them. Let's see what else. Do you anchor them on the daily candle? It doesn't necessarily matter. It's just going to give you a little bit more precision, but for the most part, yeah, I'm drawing them on daily candles. So I'll go on to a 1 day, place it, and then you use whatever time frame otherwise. You know, if you want to get the most precise, you know, if there's an actual like moment, say it was like a, you know, FOMC. So, you know, if we had an FOMC, I'd do an hourly candle, put it on the 2 p.m. Eastern, you know, just to get the most precise calculation in that sense. But yeah, so you know, those are my thoughts here on the higher scale. You know, halving VWAP. Let's keep our eyes on that because it's been pretty obvious what that's meant in the past. And then same thing with the yearly rolling VWAP. You know, that is a rejection zone. That was a support line the whole way up. Same thing in 2022 and 2021. Support line the way up. Lose that, turn it into resistance. Take out all the shorts. Bam. Same exact concept here. Well, let's bounce over the shorts here. I'll show you guys exactly what I mean. For you guys that joined yesterday or last week, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. We had the highest amount of shorts taken out in 6 months since July. This move right here that pushed us to, I think it was like 97K, you know, basically where we got up to. What was that, about 97K, about 98K. That took out, at least on the top 6 coins, took out about 130 million of shorts. Highest amount in 6 months. So what does that tell you guys? You know, and that's kind of what I was saying last week is, well, what that means is you take out all the positioning that was building up right here, thinking we were going lower. You know, where do they all have their stops? Probably up here. Pretty obvious. You know, you put your stop above the range. Bam, take them all out. Massive amount of shorts liquidated. Largest amount in 6 months. Send it lower. You know, it's a tale as old as time. So that's why I was talking about that scenario as we were pumping. You know, most people, they'll see these green candles. They'll talk about that scenario once we're down here. No, that was on the top of my mind for this exact reason. So I knew that it's like the way markets move, they're not going to give you a free entry to, you know, the low. They're not going to, shorts are not going to have a free ride. Just like why most of the time when we take out lows and we go higher, it'll sweep those lows a few times. Just like here, entered longs, you know, you think you're in a good position, taken out. Entered longs here, think you're in a good position, taken out. Finally, after 3 times taking them out, you know, it sends to where the initial positioning thought it was going. So always keep that in mind, you know, taking out levels. So yeah, and then yesterday I posted a chart, kind of demonstrating this is called a failed auction. That's why I love the volume profile. I'll use the tool here where I draw it. You know, you could use the VRVP that draws it automatically, but I like to use the fixed range. I'll draw it where I want it. And sure enough, you know, look at what we're doing now. we're basically following that 80% rule. You guys can do research on it. It's called the 80% rule. When you have when you have a clear value area, you break out of the value area high, which this tool is going to draw for you automatically. If I go into settings here, you guys will see like look style. That's value area high and value area low. Change the style of it. When you break out of that, and then you re-accept back into the value area like we did on Monday, 80% of the time you're going to go down to the value area low, which is about 86K. And look, we're basically already there. So the setup already played out. It's one of the best setups ever. Put it in your toolbox. You won't always have them. They won't always play out, but they're, it's a high accuracy setup. So like, I'll give you guys another example. Here's a perfect example of the same thing happening right here. Like, so if you draw a value area here, value area, clear range, breakout, can't sustain, re-accept back in, rejection, 80% of the time you're going to go back down to the value area low. Look, hit it perfectly. It's a great setup, guys. Awesome setup. So at this point, it's pretty clear what happens. We're getting back down now. This is the election view, or this is the halving VWAP, I believe, that we're holding on to. Is it? Yep, halving VWAP. This orange line right here. Right back down to value area low. And, we expect somewhere in this range to see some type of reaction. Whether it sweeps down here and it does the reaction, some type of reaction. This is the last chance before this becomes a sustained breakdown. And we go into the 80Ks. We go into the 70Ks. So I think that's really where our eyes must be the next few days here. And, the unfortunate part here, guys, is that, the order flow is just terribly bearish. Like we're just getting people are just dumping. We can see here, Binance offloading crazy amounts of spot, 3,500 Bitcoin offloaded on the market the last few days. That's over 2 days, we're talking 3,500 Bitcoin. What is that? Bitcoin's at, 87K. That's $300 million of Bitcoin just sent right to the order books on market selling on those order books right there. Same thing with every other venue. Perps obviously, straight down as well. But when you have this type of sell pressure, it's very hard to, see price stabilize unless you have a bunch of orders in the book. And I don't know why my Market Monkey here, it's just been slow as can be. It won't even load the heat map on Binance for whatever reason. This heat map here is like broke. It's not showing all of that, but moral of the story is there's not much happening down here until like 70s. Not much happening down here until 70s. So, that's what I talked about last stream as well, is like you could have a crazy amount of sell pressure or buy pressure, but it matters the environment you're in. Are we in a low liquidity environment? A low liquidity environment with a bunch of buying sell pressure on market, it's going to move price. But if you're in a high liquidity environment with a bunch of orders, it takes a lot more money to move these markets, which is good. It's good and it's bad. It's bad on the upside if you have a bunch of sell orders, you're not going to move higher. It's good on the downside if you have a bunch of buy orders that are just sitting there waiting to be filled. Guess what? It's going to take a lot more sell pressure for us to break certain levels. So hopefully that makes sense there. But yeah, let me know if you guys, throw in any questions as always. But for the most part, that's really kind of the main point of doing this stream today, is to show you guys where we're at, kind of reiterate. I'm not going to say I was, perfectly accurate about all of this the last few months, but for the most part, I changed my tune the last 2 months, and I was definitely more bearish than bullish, with clear levels that needed to be regained for that idea to switch. The main one being this 12-month rolling VWAP. Throw it on your guys' chart, VWAP suite, look it up. This 12-month rolling VWAP, historically speaking, if you're trading under that, you're not in a bull trend. Let's forget about cycle, this, that. You're not in a bull trend. We lose it right here back in 2017. after holding it the whole ride up, bam, you know, it stays resistance for a long, long time. Same thing here, you know, hold it here, lost it, stayed resistance for a whole long time. So, you know, these aren't really levels that we should say won't work until they don't work, you know, because they've worked for a long time. So let's continue to expect them to work unless we have evidence that they won't work. And right now, you know, they continue to work. So, you know, it's an important thing. Let me see if I can pull up here. Let's pull up Coinbase. There's been something interesting here. Coinbase doesn't have enough data. We'll see Bitstamp. If you guys are wondering, like, okay, how low are we gonna go? You know, like what should we expect here? I've talked about that a little bit, but let's see here. We had April 20th for our last halving, and I think it was May 11th, the previous halving. There's something here that I talked about actually last year, I believe. May 11th. And then I think it was July 15th. But essentially there's this interesting pattern with crypto to where you don't lose the previous cycle's halving VWAP. And once again, this is just part of playing with these things, guys. It's awesome. We'll put it at like July 11th. I think it's the halving was somewhere around there. And then that other one was, what was it, 2012? But essentially, you don't lose the previous halving's VWAP. So like, look, like this one right, actually, I'm actually going to forget about this. Sorry, guys, we're going to forget about this because this isn't accurate. I forget the exact way I have it. I'll post a chart about it later. But essentially, that level landed us at about 43K. That's like base level. Like Bitcoin should never go below that again. And obviously, I don't think we're going to get that low. I don't believe that we're going to get that low. I think that Bitcoin is going to land, if this is the start of that next leg down, Bitcoin's going to land somewhere in the high 70s to low 60s, potentially high 50s. Losing this structure right here would be a failure on the sense of Bitcoin. You know, I think that would be a failure on the sense of Bitcoin. So, you know, we're gonna heavily keep that in mind. And then one other thing I wanna touch on here, guys, just a, you know, pure educational piece for you guys. We had Michael Saylor come out and announce a $2 billion Bitcoin purchase at 95K. I mean, the guy's got to be the worst accumulator known to man. Like, truly, worst accumulator known to man. I mean, you're buying at 95K, and right away, you know, right away on that purchase, what are you down? You're down 8%. Let's pull up the Saylor tracker. Let's see. Let's see what he's at here. I mean, and then I posted that chart there, and everybody's like, oh, you know, there was a few people that were like, oh, you know, can spot an MPC from a mile away. Like, little do they know that I've talked about this for like 2-3 years. Like, people say, well, his liquidation isn't until 30K. That's not the point, guys. You know, you have the face of Bitcoin here who's about to be flat on his purchases. I mean, how do you do that? How do you start accumulating Bitcoin in 2020? And you did so bad, you did it so backwards that you're going to be flat. All your profits about to be gone. I mean, that's like, you know, I don't know, that's to me, it's comical. Let's see, they changed this. I don't know if I can see. They used to have it way better than this. Let's see, unrealized P&L. Purchase price 95K. They haven't updated the price, but unrealized P&L is 16%. Yeah, something's not right there. Now they're fabricating this. This is great. Look, purchase price 95K, and it claims that he's up 8 billion on that. Or maybe that's all of that. My bad. Okay, well, anyways, you know, he's down. If he bought 2 billion Bitcoin there, I mean, he's down 8%. He's down all $300 million, $400 million, $200 million. I mean, that's, you know, incredible. Absolutely incredible. So moral of the story here, guys, is his average is getting very close. 76K. And sure, yeah, he might not get liquidated, but like, what is going to be the headlines when we see, you know, and obviously it's not guaranteed, but like at this point, it's looking likely we're going to probably see 70s at some point. Might be a quick move. Might not happen just now. It might happen, you know, in a few weeks or a month, but still, he's going to be flat on his Bitcoin. I mean, that's going to be, don't want to see the headlines that happen there. And hopefully that does mark a low. Hopefully that puts him in his place and marks a low. But at the same time, it's like, this guy is a big threat to Bitcoin now. He is a massive threat to Bitcoin. Everybody says, his debt doesn't expire, this, that, the other. It doesn't matter. He's at a point where he has way too much Bitcoin, and it is an overhang, in my opinion. It's a big overhang that we got to constantly deal with. He's got 700,000 Bitcoin, $62 billion of Bitcoin. That's just, I don't know. It's just not something that I like. I don't agree with him at all. I think what he's doing at this point is wrong. If he would have stopped buying right here, great. He did his job. Kept his average at 36K. But yeah, we'll see. He might go down as the craziest guy ever, but at the end of the day, I don't think this is not a net positive for Bitcoin. People are like, well, yeah, it is. Okay, well, look at the price. Look at the price. Bitcoin's down to almost where it was back in 2021. So yeah, I think that there's bigger conversations to be had there. What happens when gold and silver capitulate? Well, we could take a look at gold and silver. Let's take a look here at gold and silver. Gold was one of the cleanest charts ever. Absolutely amazing clean chart. Look at my last drawings on gold. Last drawings on gold were like, mega bullish back in 2023. And just seeing this is just incredible. Absolutely incredible. So I think obviously this is like, people are looking at gold like, wow, this is crazy. But at the end of the day, guys, we got to realize what happened from 2012 or 2011 to 2020. Massive amount of money printing, inflation. Gold's just catching up from not following inflation perfectly. Technically speaking, if it was a perfect inflation follower, the chart always would be like this, But look, instead, it took 10 years, it took 13 years of consolidating, going back to where it was 13 years later. Now it's just growing what it missed out on for those years. So in my opinion, this is not surprising at all to see gold do this. Not surprising at all. Obviously, is it going to continue? No. It's not going to just continue, but it can continue for some time. I think gold could probably reach, I think $6,000 would be a potential here this year. So I don't think you should be shorting it, but I think for the most part, you miss the boat if you're not involved now. So yeah, and then we could do, on gold, it's hard to do. I got all these OG indicators that I used to use up here on this chart, but for the most part, you could just have to look at trend shifts here, and it's going to take some time for us to say that a trend shift happened. Silver obviously is growing in a way stronger way quicker. This is technically speaking more unsustainable. If we look back in 1980, look at when it did a similar move. It retraced most of that. Do I think this is going to happen this time? No. But do I think this will continue all year? No. I think silver maybe $100 start being a little bit cautionary, especially if you're involved from down here. Which once again, guys, perfect trend line. I watched this trend line since 2020. Back in some of my OG groups, sharing this trend line here. Bam. All these rejections, and then obviously, bam, break that. You're on your way. So yeah, to answer your question there, like what happens when gold and silver capitulate? Well, I think technically speaking, what happens is, we're going to see shaky time, but then money's going to flow back into risk on assets. Let's do a little comparison here. Let's put the S&P over this. Let's see what happened these last few runs on silver. Let's do both log charts here. Look, silver topped, S&P pulled back, S&P went crazy, hit new all-time highs 2012, 2015. So very similar setup there. We don't have enough data here. Let's pull up the DJI. See what happened here in 1980. Similar thing here. So the whole time silver was going crazy. Look, Dow Jones going sideways. Once silver pulls back, Dow Jones starts its next trend as silver goes into a downtrend. So what I believe is very simple. Once this tops, all markets will sell off for a month, maybe two. After that, risk on will continue will trigger its next bull run. So Pretty simple approach there, I think. What patterns can we use to spot a macro bottom? Price action indicators, order book. It's a big question there. You know, I probably can make a whole video on that. Let me know if you're talking about just Bitcoin as well. Talk about Bitcoin, you can maybe be a little bit more specific, but yeah, let me know. Before we move on here as well, I did want to show here, this was something that we talked about here for a long time, many months now. Essentially, this is the global bid and ask, so global order book skew. It's looking at the top 20%, lower 20% orders in the book for 2,000 different coins. So it's giving you a really good view of the entire crypto market. And as we talked about here for a long time, I have certain filters set up here. I said each time this bull run that we hit a certain filter, and that filter I believe is, I think it's a 2.2. Let me see here, filters. Actually, it's right here. It's, yeah, I think it's a percentage, 0.05. I think that's a 5% difference. So if bids are 5% more than asks within 20%, it's going to trigger green, and then vice versa for red. Each time we saw them trigger green, it triggered a bull run this cycle, or bull trend. Bam. You know, each time marked the bottom. Over here, triggered and marked the bottom. It didn't do it yet here. What does this mean? It means that even though the order book dynamics were very favored for bulls right here, it still wasn't enough to go higher. Why? Because not enough people were interested in being aggressive to enter this market. You know, that's what moves price, guys. Aggressive market buying. Limit orders don't move price. You need people to go on their exchange and click market. That's what moves price. And, you know, I think either 2 live streams ago or last one, I talked about exactly why this was a warning signal. That you have a perfect environment, and when bulls aren't taking advantage of it, I used an analogy. It was like a forest analogy. It was like, hey, you could either take the path that's paven, or you take a path that is, you know, thick. And if you have a perfectly paven path and people are just looking at it and not walking down it, that's a warning sign. It's like, hey, you know, you got an easy path to go where you want to go. Bulls, they didn't take advantage of it. What does that mean? It means that the dynamics of the market has shifted. It means that we're seeing something that we haven't seen for 2.5 years. What is that? It's lack of interest from buyers. So, you know, I'm waiting patiently to see that change. I was thinking general for all asset classes. What difference have you seen between all certain asset classes, top, bottom, top? You know, I can't talk about that for equities, you know, stocks. That's a whole nother game. For crypto, you know, there's a whole, you know, setup. Even back, you know, I marked the bottom, which still has this right here. You know, if you want to look at what I used the last bottom, you know, here it is. I used a trend line that was 2,000 days old. I used the logarithmic MACD on a very high time frame, hitting the same level that we hit before. I used RSI hitting the level that it hit before. I think this is probably a month chart or 2-week chart. And I used a bullish divergence. I used transaction fees, which I don't think is viable anymore. And more importantly, I used the days until the halving, which perfectly marked the top this cycle once again. You see certain color, meaning days until the halving, marked tops. That green marked tops. That orange turning from yellow to orange, dark orange, marked bottoms. That's how I called the last bottom to a perfect T. We could see price right there was 16.6. That's when I changed my tune. You know, is that going to work again this time? No. Will I keep eyes out for the similar setup? Absolutely. You know, absolutely. We'll keep eyes out on that. And obviously, I've extended my analysis skills a lot since 2023, but that was 3 years ago. But these things still work. Like LMACD still works good. RSI still works good on high time frame. Divergences still work good, high time frame though. So keep a you know, keep that in mind, high time frame. But yeah, so beyond that, I think I covered really main things I wanted to cover here. Don't want to waste anybody's time and keep you you know, keep you waiting here for me to repeat very similar things. But for the most part, I'm pretty sure You know, I've given all the evidence to show why this might be a questionable period, why we might be seeing another leg down print here. We've watched it pretty well the last few weeks for you guys that follow me closely. And once again, it looks like everybody's taken, you know, people, this market's pulled people away. You know, I used to get at least 100, 150 people on here. We only have 30, 40 people on here now. And, you know, I don't blame them. I don't blame them because this market is treacherous. And for all you guys that are still here, I'll be honest with you. You know, if you want to continue in this market and you like this market, then you got to learn how to trade because there's plenty of trading opportunities here. You know, we go down to 30-minute, 1 hour. You look at it, you get trades all the time. Perfect trades, you know, clean trades. If you're just holding crypto, hoping for it to go back up, it's going to be a grueling potential few months, year, whatnot. So just keep that all in mind. This market's not like it used to be, and you just got to learn how to trade. And, you know, I don't share a lot of stuff with short-term trading. You know, what I share on Twitter is about 20% of what I could share, but you know, there's opportunities to continue to learn. You know, a lot of the theories and stuff that I've shared. You know, it's kind of the base foundation of learning how to trade. So yeah. And for all you guys that are watching, would you guys get any use out of more live streams or more YouTube? Had a lot of people ask me to do more YouTube videos, you know, different type of YouTube videos. Might start doing that. But at the same time, I am working on a platform that hopefully we'll launch it here in the next few months. And I think it should be a benefit. Hundreds of people have asked me for something like this, but it's going to be a lot more special than anything, you know, people see. So, you know, stay tuned on that. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, I mean, you know, hopefully you guys got a good overview here today. I'm trying to think if there's anything else top ahead to really go over. XRP, you know, not much more to say beyond the charts that I posted last. You know, we lose 180, you know, we're in the abyss. That abyss can land us at 145 or back down to 111. It's going to be an interesting point. You know, I don't have much more to say about altcoins. You know, there's really not much more for me to say. Because guess what? It's all just following Bitcoin at this point. Altcoins are great to cover specifically and singularly when the market looks good and the market's going up. Yeah, we're going to cover a lot more coins. From the downside, all that matters is Bitcoin. You know, all that matters is Bitcoin right here. It's all that matters. Nothing's going to do its own thing unless Bitcoin is, you know, doing it as well. So yeah, it's the boring part of, you know, crypto. Will exciting parts come back? Absolutely. But as of right now, this is what we consider the boring part of crypto. You know, very, very boring. Sol as well. You know, Sol is, clean up this chart right here. I don't know if any of you guys even care about Sol, but, you know, look at this. We've had a clear value area established for over 2 years now. We do have a lot of trading down here, but like at this point, if Bitcoin does snap that low into 70s, we're going to see Sol go back down to $100, 90s, and hopefully that would be a bottom, or potentially down to like 75. But at the same time, like Sol, I don't see Sol doing this. Like Sol's not going to crumble back to zero. I think at this point, it's went sideways so long. This has been a correction in a way as well. Time-based correction right here. You know, very clear time-based correction, clear range. So, you know, I think we're nearing lows. I do think we're nearing lows. But I don't know if that's going to happen in February or if we're going to chuck our way back up until May, June, maybe get up to 105, you know, hang out there, go sideways, chop people up, then see another leg down where the actual lows come in the summer. That's really what I'm seeing here. You know, those are kind of the options I'm seeing. But at the end of the day, guys, like the way that all the inflation is going, the economy, gold moving up crazy, you know, we don't have like years and years to sit around and wait for crypto to grow. Like, you know, especially Bitcoin. Like, if Bitcoin's gonna do what it should be doing, there shouldn't be these years where it goes down and loses more than half its value. Like, those days should be slowly becoming over. You know, Bitcoin should start moving like the Nasdaq. It should start moving like, you know, I wouldn't say gold, but it should start moving like stocks do. You know what I'm saying? Like, it should. There shouldn't be, like, Bitcoin should not be doing that stuff anymore. It should be doing something like this, where, yeah, the most you might have is, you know, November, December. You might have 10, 11 months of downtrend max, but that happens every 5, 6 years, you know. Not every 2 years we're doing these bear markets, this and that. Bitcoin would fail. Bitcoin would absolutely fail. You know, it would be like a no-no. But here, let's look. I'm sure you guys saw this, but you know, it kind of pushes my point. Let's see if I can pull it up here. Oh, we do have one other thing to look at, total 3. Where was this at here? Oh, here it is. Look at Bitcoin's volatility since 2011. Just down, down, down. I mean, look at the last year. I mean, this is like vastly different than anything we've seen. It just continues down, down, down. What does that mean? It means Bitcoin's going to move less and less. Less to the upside, less to the downside. So I think we all need to be prepared for that, you know? Oh, yeah, sorry, guys. I forgot to switch. My bad. So essentially, I was showing this chart, and, you know, this is the annualized volatility 30-day rolling since 2011. Look, volatility is it's down in the gutter. You know, I mean, this has got to be, if I put a moving average on this, moving average has got to be at all-time lows. So essentially, we should expect this market to continue to become more stable. Altcoins, maybe not, because guess what, guys? All those altcoins, what do? You know, I hate to be that, but what do? These altcoins have failed, they failed, and they failed. There's a handful of them that I think are worth investing in, and I mean one handful. Other than that, all of these are on their way to zero, and hope everybody realizes that. It's not to be harsh, it's to be, you know, real. It's to face reality, and to say, yeah, this market has failed itself in many, many ways. So yeah, but then, okay, last thing I'm going to cover here. Let's go about 50 minutes here. Pretty good live stream. Obviously not the most exciting live stream, but you know, good coverage here of things. Let's take a look here at total 3. Something I posted I think it was last week. Total 3. Here it is. So yeah, essentially I posted this, and sure enough, it was, you know, clear as day that, hey, once again, a trend line from the start of this bull market, holding it the whole time, every low, bounced off of it, lost it here in November, we lost it, retested it as resistance earlier this month. That's like the exact setup that it's like, okay, look out for the door. So once again, people say, you know, when will I get bullish again? When will I change my tune? Well, here we are. Got to regain this level. Like I told you guys for many times this stream, got to get back above this trend. Or if not, you know, you're down here, then you turn bullish. But in the immediate structure, that's what needs to happen. Otherwise, you got to be cautionary. You got to be cautionary. So yeah, guys. I think that's really it for me. Let's take a look. Let's just throw this over here. Show you guys a very similar setup. I mean, very similar. You know, not perfect, but very similar idea. Look, take off this VWAP here. We pull this down just a little bit more. You know, trend, perfect trend. Missed it here by a hair, but held it here. Broke it, trend shifted. Now we could even say that we had the same type of retest. Lose it, retest. There's a few different ways you can draw this, but it's a very similar concept. And yeah, I do like trend lines on high time frame. So yeah, I hate to be grim like this, but you know, really since we lost the 3 month rolling VWAP is when I changed my tune on that one live stream back in November. And since then, it's like, you know, it's just hope. It's really just hope. It's like hoping something shifts. You know what I mean? It's hoping something shifts. But at the same time, you know, hope only pulls you so far. And what I'm saying is you guys got to be careful about the people that have this bias and they don't look at the other option. You know, that's not what trading's about. People are true traders, true investors. They're going to put themselves in a position to win. They're not going to put themselves in a position to run ego laps if they call a crazy move. Hopefully the difference there makes sense. You know, it's a very important difference. But yeah, let's see. Throw in any other last questions you guys have. Would love to cover them. Insanely helpful. Any content helps. Awesome. Respect your content. Thanks for sharing insight. Very appreciated. Much appreciated. Sebastian, hope you're doing well, man. Enjoying the sun, absolutely. Enjoying the sun. But yeah, so if you guys don't have anything else, hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you aren't subscribed, definitely hit the subscribe and like. I think that there's a good chance I might start doing some video content. Maybe one stream a week and one video a week. You know, this is a slow period though, so I'm gonna expect to, you know, not have too much too much engagement on it. Because yeah, since like the high period of January of last year, you know, November, December, like right after the election, man, what a difference. What a difference. Here, I'll show you guys my my analytics here. Obviously, I haven't posted nearly as much, but like, take a look at this difference here. What is this? Engagements here. Look at impressions. I mean, just way less. You know, way. I mean, we were up at 350K on average a day, and now it's like, you know, barely anything. Obviously, I didn't post for a month and a half, barely, but still, like, much less. Like, people are, you know, much less. So hopefully hopefully, you know, the market comes back. I care less about engagement. I want to see the market come back and see people get excited again. You know, I want to see people make money because too many people got taken out. Too many people got taken out the last few months, especially October. I mean, that was brutal. October was brutal, you know, absolutely brutal. So yeah, that's really all I got for you guys. Hopefully you guys have a great day, night, and yeah, see you guys on X, and you know, we'll do another live stream probably maybe early next week. Might do a Tuesday stream. Yeah, I might do a Tuesday stream next week. So, you know, I'm gonna keep these, you know, hopefully they don't turn boring, but I'm gonna try to keep these you know, in a consistent manner here now. So yeah, thanks everybody for joining. Hope you guys have an awesome day, night, wherever you may be. See you soon.